Maybe get a little free. That one time of the year, gotta layer the mixture fluid. Wait, yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm wearing, like. Leave the house, to be honest. Oh, yeah, I know, I know. That last. I don't like, say, I don't like the way that they feel, but it's okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
These ones will be. Yeah, right. I have like one pair of leggings that I like. It's okay, funny. There's some that are like fuzzy around. But really get your personally, I'm not very. Oh, there. I would probably. Brandy. Wait, we're. Yeah. The third time. That's fine. I buy just lemonade. Or is it lemonade? I have no idea, but it's on well, there's a big massive thing. Highly recommend. Whoever made this. Yeah, did any of you guys make the little drinks or the? Yes, it's like just lemonade and then lemon seltzer water and frozen. We made that. So it just it's really good. Yeah, I guess that's true. True. All right, got a cookie bag. That didn't happen. Oh. No, it's not. I think we're gonna start like getting started soon, because it is like 5:30.
Watermelon.
Oh, sorry, I'm. No. Yeah, we'll get started soon. Everybody on Zoom, like, let us know if like you can't hear okay. We'll start off just like introducing ourselves. I'm Morgan. I'm so happy that you guys are all here. We can go in a circle, maybe say name, pronouns, and then what you ate for breakfast this morning. Yeah, she, her, I ate a biscuit. I'm India, she, her, and I had eggs, toast, and ham. All together.
Hi everybody, I'm Stephanie. Today for breakfast I had eggs and French toast and a breakfast cocktail made by my sweet friend over here.
Oh, look.
Both. Yeah, multiple sweet friends. I'm Ellen, she, they. I woke up too late to have breakfast, so I ate lunch at like 1, and I made butternut squash ravioli. It was delicious.
I'm Lauren, my pronouns are she, her, and for breakfast I had eggs with like some onions and garlic on top and chili crisp and some dressed arugula and a baguette and some really good coffee, and it was really delicious. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Mia. I use she, her pronouns. And I had a acai bowl with cranberries and peanut butter.
I'm Charles, eat them. For breakfast, I had some beautiful eggs and even more beautiful baguette.
I'm Bryn, he, they, and for breakfast I had eggs and toast and fruit and coffee.
I'm Erin, she, her, and I had orange rolls for breakfast.
I'm Tim, he, they, and I had eggs and potatoes for breakfast.
I'm Liv, they, she, and I had bone broth and boiled tofu for breakfast. Mormon.
I'm D, they, she, and I had the egg, baguette, bread, arugula situation. And, what was the other question?
I think that was it.
Okay, yeah. That was me.
Friends on Zoom, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Jade. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
My pronouns are she, her, and for breakfast I had eggs, toast, and home fries that I all made myself.
Yum.
Can you all hear me? I know I'm a little low. Okay. Hey everyone, my name is Douglas, he, him. Everyone had these great things for breakfast. I just had myself an Asiago bagel. So yeah.
Let me look here real quick. That's a really cool bike.
Oh, I think I'm next. I'm Ocean. And for breakfast today, I had an omelet with some spinach and tomatoes on there, which sounds really plain. And then I had some like hashed potatoes with it too. And I made it all by myself. So, oh, also my pronouns are they, them. My bad.
I think Ashley might just be listening. That's my mom. Yeah, she was to listen in.
Well, yeah, everybody on Zoom, feel free to like unmute yourselves throughout the meeting. And also we can see your comments, so if you feel comfortable like typing in the chat, you're welcome to do that. And then also for all of you, make sure that you're just like projecting so everybody like can see you. We might have like people trickle in like throughout, and feel free like throughout the meeting to like keep working on your little seed stuff. When you want to talk a little bit about like student farm.
Yep, so I'm an employee at Ohio State Student Farm. We manage about 4 or 5 acres of land at Waterman Farm on Lane and Kenny. We grow 40 to 60 different kinds of vegetables and fruit. Yeah, we hosted some community supported agriculture programs. And actually that's how I met the wonderful people that I know here today. Yeah, we are planting these seeds today. I work partially in this greenhouse, especially during the winter time. We're going to be transferring these to the germination room after. If you guys are interested in picking these back up, this building is open to the public for you to come in and grab it. I can show you exactly where to go. And if anyone needs pots or extra soil afterwards, I can also make that happen. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions about the farm, anything like that, I am happy to answer them.
Yeah, and yeah, we're so happy to like be here in this space to talk about Braiding Sweetgrass and stuff. We wanna start off like this session.
Yeah, so we're all gathered here today because we have one thing in common. We all read, even if it was just a little bit, or heard about the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. And this is a book that I personally like visited when I first started getting like into reading again. And it's like the perfect book, I feel, to like get into reading and like get inspired to like even like look into other stuff or just like pursue like your curiosity more. Because of the way that Dr. Kimmerer like presents like really complex information, not only in a way that's like very like approachable and accessible, but very intersectional in thinking and always in like a world mindset, which is awesome because it's, even though it's like taking place on like native land. So there was a lot of topics I feel that were covered in the book, but I guess to start off, maybe like to ease into the conversation, were there any like new discoveries that you guys had from the book, like based on like any media that the book led you to? So for example, like a movie that you watched because of the book, or like another book you read because of this book, or music, anything. If anyone had something jump out in particular, please let us know.
I shared this before a couple other people came, but I was led to the Ologies podcast, which I had heard a little bit of before, hosted by Ali Ward. She did a podcast episode with Robin Wall Kimmerer, and they talked more about the book and just like Robin's life. And I thought that was really interesting to hear her voice and just like hear her speak as opposed to just reading her words. But it was just as powerful.
Yeah, or go ahead. I feel like amazes me. Like reading this book, I was just like so taken aback by like how much knowledge she holds in that big brain of hers.
So
And
smart.
She is, and like she's able to like put together so many. It's like very much like cross-disciplinary, like she's able to like hold together so many different like fields of study in a way that's like poetic and like palatable to like so many different people.
I think that for me, I didn't like look into this yet, but something that I really want to look into more is like gift economies. I thought that was a really interesting point that she brought up. And just like, I think that was probably my favorite chapter, or like part, I guess, I don't know if it was just one chapter of the book, where she's like talking about like shifting her mindset from like a market economy to a gift economy, and like how much like the value of things changes. Cause I also felt like, it's just something I wanted to like research more, to just find like more ways to like implement that into like my own life, because I think that the way that she talked about it was really inspiring, but also I think that like, thinking about things from like more of a sense of like a gift economy, or like that like reciprocity type mindset, kind of like, I don't know, like makes things more meaningful and like fulfilling.
That was like such a great chapter. I think that was one that like stuck with me a lot. The the there's so much, I think the way that she put it was like there's so much honor in people to receive gifts. I'm gonna stop because I don't even remember what she said. But I've been thinking about it. I haven't read this in like a year, so.
Morgan, I think you were on the right track though. Because was that the chapter where she also talked about like the strawberries and how she made the like she made whatever it was for her father for his birthday? Okay, yeah. No, I thought it was really interesting. It also like just kind of the concept of like the gift of kind of loud, hold on. The gift of giving. And I think how sometimes even how like when we do give a gift or something like that, in our minds we're like, oh, so we give a gift, but sometimes like if the same person doesn't give us a gift, we feel like some kind of way, we feel like they owe us something. But I think it also ties back to like how a lot of like friendships and like just relationships in general, like should it be based off of like just transactions. It's like, oh, I expect this from you when you're a friend. Like if you're somebody's friend, there should be expectation of like giving gift or something like that, I guess, and also expecting to like receive something in the, if you all see what I'm saying.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was getting at. I also think it was like
I just think the idea of like the gift economy and the circular economy, which is like the bigger, more political kind of like implementation of that, it helps combat overconsumption and you value everything that you receive more. And, you know, when you place more value on an object that you receive from someone you love, I don't know, I think it's just really, if we could implement like a large scale gift economy, I think it would really slow consumption and combat climate change in a lot of ways, honestly, while building stronger relationships between people.
I thought that the part that, did someone name? I think the part that Bert was getting at about the gig economy was really interesting, because was that during like when she was like bartering? Or like in the beginning?
It was kind of in the beginning of the book, yeah.
So from what I remember of that, she was at like a little flea market, and she was talking about how she was talking to indigenous Mexican women, and how for other things that she had bought in the past, she was like, I knew I was always getting charged the American prices of like things, but it was always so great to like be able to directly like thank the person who dedicated like their time to like sourcing like all these materials that like she was purchasing. And I thought that was like such a huge contrast to later on in the book, where she tries to go to the mall and like have try to like keep her mindful experience, the one that she uses when she's participating in the gift economy, in the setting of a mall, and how difficult it was for her to buy like pens and paper. She was like, I just was in the parking lot breathing, being like, okay, just pens and paper. And like it goes in and is like, okay, she's like, I felt really crazy trying to explain to this like person, this worker that's making like minimum wage, like, can you help me find a paper that's like the least harmful to Mother Earth? And it's like, yeah, that's not something you're even, the reason she probably felt so uncomfortable bringing that up was because as like consumers, we're not conditioned to like value those questions first, because our consumption as like common folk is like very, very different than indigenous practices, and like it shows like it like highlights like the already like existing like distance and like the effects.
Yeah, I think that was like my favorite part of it, because like when she's, I feel like today, like when you buy something, that's it, like that's the end of the process, is like your money is what you are giving like in exchange for the thing you're getting, and that's kind of where it stops. And I feel like, you know, it misses like a lot of the work that went in to get the thing where you are, especially like, you know, just how like globalized everything is now. Like your product, whatever you bought, probably was made in like multiple different countries even to like get to like the place where it is, like materials one place, the like assembly a different one. But I feel like, you know, like when you give someone a gift, there's like that difference of like, you know, you give it to somebody and then they might say thank you by like doing something in return for you. I don't really know how you could like implement that in buying stuff, but I did think that that was like something that was really interesting. And I also thought that it was even cooler when she talked about how that the like indigenous language didn't have like a word for please, because it was just like understood in the language. And I'm a language major, and so I always think it's really interesting to like view the way that people's worldview changes based off like the language that they learn. Because like, I mean, there's even like studies that people like view colors differently based off like what like language you have based around colors. Like if you have more than one word to say blue, then you're like really a lot better at like picking out different shades of blue than you are if your language doesn't like differentiate between light versus dark blue. And that was like, I just thought really interesting, because it's like, imagine if like in English or in other languages we didn't have please, and it was just kind of like assumed that everything that we had was for everyone else because it would eventually come back to us.
I like what you're talking about makes me think of how like language wise too, like there's so much additional things we do in like America as a part of like our transaction process. This sounds okay. So like as a barista, like somebody tips me and that's how I know they're grateful for the service. But like the fact that I don't know, in exchanges in the gift economy, the gratitude is already like inherent to it, like. It like someone's polite and gives me money, that's how I know that like I'm valued, but like. In a gift economy, the fact that you're just receiving the gift, like you're a part of that is. I feel like, I don't know.
Anyways, I liked the like inherent responsibility that was given along with the gift.
Yeah.
I also think like the emergence of e-commerce and buying things on your phone really takes away from, like, you're not actually seeing another human face to face that you're buying from a screen. It like separates us even further from the idea of the gift economy and just like being grateful, because who are you being grateful to when you're buying on Amazon, you know? It's allows you to undervalue everything, I think.
I feel like the personalization or like personalizing objects was also really helped by like the chapter that she talks about like the maple people and like just how like we don't see nature as having rights, but like they do, and like they have their own like whole systems and like I call it, I don't know. But yeah, like seeing like being thankful for like the trees that like went into this book and like everything about it, you know, versus like when she's talking about plastics, where she's like, it's not that I'm not grateful for all of the whales that died like thousands of years ago, but like it's less personal. So I feel like, yeah, like personalizing it, it just makes you like, yeah, think so much more about it.
Yeah, I was learning about, I believe there's a philosopher by the name of Marcuse, I believe, and he talks about like how in like a small community, there's a lot more value in the work of somebody making clocks than in like a chain of people who each like go part into the clock. And he talks about also how that like benefits like the clock maker. So this is obviously in like a small scale capitalist society, but it's just like, I think that's interesting to like kind of compare and contrast with a gift economy and like how can we kind of make things more local, and like how does that contribute to the interaction between the consumer and the producer? I don't know, I think that's kind of interesting.
Something I'm really thankful for that I get to participate in is the Student Farms CSA program. And I think that has, I don't know if you are part of the CSA, what's your experience of buying produce like from a share? You get to see the farmers, pick out the produce yourself, versus going to the supermarket and you're buying produce that has probably come from maybe not even this country, you know? So I'm just really lucky that I'm able to be a part of like a exchange between a community that fosters a community. And I've met people that I would have never met before, just because I grew them food that they got to eat. It's like giving a gift. That's like a gift economy, like the CSA, but yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say about like the whole gift giving thing and how she mentioned it. There was like a part in the book where she was talking about how some of the older women would knit like little hats and stuff like that when a baby would be about to arrive and shit. Oh, sorry. I can do it. Anyways, and just thinking about that in general and how you can like minimize like your actual spending on like big old products and stuff from big companies, and just her talking about like making your own gifts or like making your own like little cards and stuff like that, and how much more I don't know, how much more of like a feeling it puts behind it in general, like getting a sweater or something that a friend knitted versus them just buying like a phone case or something, you know, you're going to have so much more of a relationship and a connection to that object. Maybe you won't even see it as much of just like an object, but I really like love thinking about that because I like making things for people and I don't really like buying big gifts and stuff like that. I'd rather just like make something for someone. So, yeah.
Have any of you guys ever seen like The Good Place all the way through, or at least is anybody planning on watching it before I spoil it? Raise your hand now on Zoom, anybody? But like, okay, continuing on then. You know how like basically the whole idea is like, you know, the good place is like heaven and then the bad place is like hell. And basically at some point in the series, they find out that actually nobody in years has gone into the good place. And it's because, you know, like everybody's action is weighed. I know.
Really?
They calculate who goes to the good place by like, they like kind of like assign like a value, so to speak, onto your actions. But they realize that in like the economy that we put ourselves in, like with capitalism and like just kind of like, I mean, we were kind of born before it was, after it was like this, so to speak, but how things are now, it's kind of like, okay. It used to be, you buy your friend an apple because you're nice like that and you give it to them. That used to be like a good action, you get positive points for it. But now it's like you buy your friend an apple, so you get the good points action still, but you also have to realize, oh, the apple was imported and the importing used child labor and okay, negative points. And so it was basically like no one could like get enough good points to get into the good place because because of how globalized everything is and how much like big business and like large corporations have like power into like kind of making things produced rather unethically. It was just like impossible to rack up enough good points to get into the good place. And I just thought that was really interesting because I feel like it is genuinely very hard to like not have this very negative effect on the world environment. Like it kind of like, I feel like where a lot of us are kind of put into a position where like, it's impossible not to at least partake in this like system somehow. That made me think of this book.
That like, I feel like she talks so much about like how like particular foods like are like eaten at specific times of the year because like that's just when they like, that's when they write that. Yeah. And like I feel like we're so far removed from that because like we just like import it from, like the global south and everything. And like, yeah, I feel like getting like in tune with like eating the things that are in season because they're in season and everything, like because that's what's here, like that's what's available. I don't know, I really like that part of it. And yeah,
even with something as simple as that, as like knowing what's in season, it's crazy to think that like we can be that disconnected from the land that we can live. So like I'm a Midwest person, like I grew up in Chicago and like farthest I've gone is living here. So it's all pretty much the stuff that's in season is gonna be in season here and there. And to be honest, I'm 22 years old and I can name a couple things that are in season just from what I've physically like seen and like been exposed to. But I don't know like the wide variety of things that are actually available. And that was brought like even more to my attention after learning and like trying to find out more about the Black Forager. If you guys have like seen this TikToker and like she's from Columbus and does a lot of like foraging and like uses it in like her recipes and stuff. And she recently like made a video talking about like going through an international like supermarket and being like, yeah, all this stuff is like brought in because it's like an international supermarket. She's like, let's see all the stuff that I can find here that like I can find also in my backyard. So then she goes and is like picking out all these stuff, and like one of them is which is also mentioned in Braiding Sweetgrass, leeks. She's like, here's leeks, and like she just shows them really quick just to point out that like any other viewers who like might not have access directly can like get it from the supermarket. But my mind was thinking about it like reverse. I was like, damn, I'm here and I'm buying that stuff at the supermarket. And I just finished like reading the part where Dr. Kimmerer was talking about going to the mall, which for her also like had a grocery store, and seeing leeks and seeing like how some like larger vegetables like tightly wrapped in plastic. And she was like, it felt so, my heart was so broken seeing like the produce literally like suffocated in there when it's like native to like the area. And I don't know, that just like really opened my eyes to the big disconnect that I've been having that has actually been lessened through being a CSA member. So yeah, that was something that made me reflect a lot.
Something that's interesting too about eating in season and just being aware about what's in season is that the crops that are seasonally grown have like the macronutrients and the bioavailability that your body needs at that time of year. Like during the summertime, watermelon grows because you need to cool down your body, and watermelon is naturally cooling. It provides you with enough fiber to like continue moving and foraging and hunting. It's an evolutionary process that we grew up with. I think that's something that's really fascinating. And then you're also disconnected from that when you're buying strawberries in the middle of winter at a grocery store.
I think that's like such an interesting point, and that's the first thing that I thought about when we were like talking about eating in season, and something that I would like to explore more, because I really don't know too much about like the nutritional aspect of it, but I think that that's so interesting. And also, I did not get to very much of this book. It's been a crazy week. But I was reading the part about cons and where they were like stuffing them in the pants or whatever, and she was talking about how they used to boil them instead of like cracking them and toasting them like we eat now. And I think now you tend to see the same foods like prepared the same way over and over again, but I'd really like to learn more about other preparations that can potentially like bring out certain aspects of the food or like certain benefits in the food that like you might not have known about otherwise. Like I think a lot of it might be in the preparation, and we're just not really like taught that. You know what I mean? Like I know to saute this vegetable, do this with that vegetable, but I'm sure there are other ways to use so many different things. Yeah.
So question for the crowd, since we're talking about sustainability. Does anyone call recycle in Columbus if your landlord didn't give you a recycling bin?
That means the building doesn't pay for recycling, so no one's gonna pick up.
Oh.
Recycling. But if you bring your recycling to campus, you can use recycling bin here, which is what I want to do.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Also, I don't know if anyone's interested on the same note. If you're interested in composting and don't want to pay for it, at the student farm, we do have an earth tub, which operates year round. If you bring your compost to the farm, we will compost it for you for free.
How do you keep compost in your tiny apartment that will not want to be smelly? That's not big.
Well, I little bins.
With like the filter thing on the top.
No, I just got it from the OSU. I don't know, I haven't noticed mine smelling too bad. But I will say when I dropped off my compost, I don't think they're like turning it or taking care of it, and it seems like it's rotting. And like the OSU compost, that's the last couple times I've
Was it
dropped
at
off.
the farm?
No, I dropped it off by the Wex. And like just like the big like, yeah, so I don't know how their process is really going for them. But so their student farm might be a better option. Okay.
I was just gonna say, how do you use, like, if you would give an example of how you would use compost materials on the farm? I feel like that would be cool, so you can see where our compost is.
So actually, I don't know if you guys, this is like, you're about to realize something, but we get free compost through the city, and it's called Comtil, and it's actually comprised of human waste. So it's sanitized, heated human waste, and that is what the majority of our plants are fertilized from. We use it before we're planting anything. It's all sanitary. It's really sustainable.
Like bathrooms that are like full circle, and they use like lime chips and wood, and then they recycle it.
That's part of it.
And it's so cool.
Yeah, I know. I think that's really sweet. Unfortunately, I don't think that's implemented citywide, but it is incinerated, and then we get some nitrogen and potassium, and then we spread it before we plant anything, and yeah, it adds nutrients to the plants. But yeah, that's our biggest source of compost. We mostly use it because it's free from the city. They drop it off for us. But
When you say human waste, I don't know why, but my mind immediately just went to corpses. If you have any of you seen Ask a Mortician on YouTube?
is it the Corpse Farm? Have you seen the Corpse Farm?
I don't think so. But she has like a there's like a composting funeral home. I didn't watch the whole video, but like that's out there. Also, it made me think of Fantastic Fungi.
Oh,
So yeah.
I know that it's like the Netflix documentary, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Okay.
totally worth watching.
It's like
blows your mind.
super pretty. Because they have a lot of like time lapse shots of like crazy fungi growing, and it's so fun to watch them just like sprout out, and they're beautiful.
Guys, that's us. Just the first like 0.01 second.
Yeah. It's not right now, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Talking about the dead bodies and the compost thing makes me think about, okay, so there's this episode in Hannibal, and I didn't finish that show, but it was entertaining when we watched it, where, so the serial killer, his aim, like, so he killed all the bodies, but he put them together in this like mushroom thing, so they were all connected, so after they died, they were like talking to each other. Because the way mushrooms like speak to each other, so the bodies, like there were like mushrooms growing out of their like body, but they were like still. Anyways, that's the thought.
I think the like idea of like, I don't know the scientific terms, but when plants talk to each other, that is crazy. And one of the books that I read like a few months ago, Finding the Mother Tree, by Susan, I think it's Simard. Anyways, that book was like incredible, and her like whole I don't know if any of you have read it, but like her whole like research is like in how trees communicate with one another, like in the forest, and how they like kind of like support one another throughout the growing process. And like it reminded me of like in Braiding Sweetgrass, how she talks about like how like reversing like the evolutionary like hierarchy, like what humans are like made to this planet, and like we should be learning from like the plants and like the environment, and just like how like trees and plants, and like I'm looking at the Three Sisters chapter right now, like and she's like the plants teaching a universal language, which is food. Like these things are able to like, these beings are able to like communicate and cultivate like community in like a way that like we as people have like not been able to like accomplish yet. And like it's so, it just like gives some chills, because that's like so awesome. And like even we're like just beginning, we're just like on the tip of the iceberg for like understanding like how we can like and like improve on and like, but you guys should check out that book too, the Mother Tree, Finding the Mother Tree. Yeah, I like cried at the end of it, so I was like, this is like, it was just so moving, and like the way that she writes is like really.
I think the whole book was so magical. I read it last year, I think, for the first time, and it was like the first book or any form of like media, really, maybe besides like a few songs here or there, but it's like my first form of media that was by like an Indigenous person that I really knew of, and it shook my world in so many ways. I'm like a Scorpio, so I got super obsessed with like all Indigenous stuff, like 2 or 3 months, like super heavy trying to look into it, but it just sometimes like makes me think about like how real all of this is, and how honestly how brave she is for writing the book in general. And like I wouldn't say it's like necessarily, well, maybe it is kind of a cry for help, but that has a more of like a negative connotation to it. But obviously it's her trying to like educate us and like, you know, speak some of her knowledge and magic that she knows and everything as well. But also another important thing that I really liked about the book is when she's talking about like trying to learn her language again and just remembering it, and how even if it's just like one sentence, that in itself is like keeping her, you know, her people like alive in the memory of them, because obviously the point is just to act like Indigenous people like were never there or all of that. And I felt really connected to that because I would love to one day learn my birth language again. And it just made me feel so motivated that like one day when I do choose to do it, even if I can't speak it like I ever did in the past, just me being able to carry a little bit of that language with me into the next generation of whatever, if there is. I don't really want kids, but yeah, I just love the book so much. Oh my gosh, it makes me kind of sad sometimes too, though, of like how far like how far away society has gotten from just like everything that she's talking about, the relationship of reciprocity. I can't say that word like at all, but I honestly just kind of like after reading the book, I just felt like sitting there, not necessarily like I keep saying defeated, but that's not even the right word, but like just so full of like new knowledge and feeling like a little bit, yeah, defeated. But I was like, you know what? Let me not try to be like sit here in my despair or whatever. I'm not like an indigenous person, and though I'm like black and I've been through whatever horrendous thing that white people have like continued to put lots of other people through, I'm like whatever little bits of pain I'm feeling is not even compared to what indigenous people feel, like witnessing everything, honestly, how far away we've gotten from being in touch of knowing where our food come from or just our knowledge of the world in general.
Feeling of the despair is like, because that was something that like goes through my head, even when you mentioned the recycling, because I remember seeing 60 Minutes where like even a recycling that does get like sent to wherever, like we used to just ship it to like China, but then China stopped taking our recycling. And so it's like loading up in warehouses because like I don't think there's enough machinery to like actually like turn the recycled material into what I don't know, it just takes a excessive process. So it like we're just filling up buildings with our stuff once again, but also how like even like you have to make sure you're like recycling is clean and everything, or else it can't like it just feels like, and this is just a small bit of it. So like how do we obviously like this book group like facilitates hope and like learning more about it, but like does anybody have any recommendations on how to like maintain like hope for sustainability when it feels like Amazon is just destroying everything? Like
this.
yeah,
I think too, it's about like kind of a balance, because like you were saying, like you can't really just do it.
yeah.
And I feel like new actions that kind of counter like the CSA or talking about indigenous rights, like gift economies. Like I feel like that's all we can do, really. I mean,
I also think, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like I ultimately think that humans want to survive, even the really bad ones that are kind of effing up our environment. So I feel like eventually, hopefully not before it's too late, people will realize that like a lot of change does need to happen. Like it's obviously not sustainable that we continue how it is. So sadly, I feel like it'll probably be only when it presents a problem to even the most well-off people. But I feel like eventually humans will, have to change, even if they don't want to or didn't want to before. But also I think that awareness is a really big part about it. But that's like with anything, and it helps.
when I was researching like her and her like work outside of writing for the author spotlight, I was looking into her like projects as a professor and like what she's actually doing. And a lot of it is trying to incorporate TEK, which is like traditional ecological knowledge, and with Western like ecological knowledge. And she is running there's a series of like committees. She has a youth center at the university that she's teaching at to like not only implement it in the stage that we're at, but also make sure it's being implemented in the future. Because since she has like the knowledge from both sides, like she has the like biological knowledge, she knows both sides extremely well. She's like, that's our biggest hope, is to like incorporate this humanity into our actions regarding sustainability, whatever that may be. And another big thing that kept coming up was like the grammar of animacy in the language. And like
chapter is really good.
Yeah, like we were talking about
earlier, like the way that you talk about things and like refer to things, even if it's like individually on like a one-time basis matters, because
Right.
you're gonna like repeat it over and over. So like her advice is like you have to incorporate that somehow, and hopefully like her efforts, like she just was granted like a MacArthur Fellowship, which is like huge and really exciting. So I'm hoping that she can continue being our favorite, educate future.
Well, I think like, in terms of like talking about hope, I think you have to like compare it with other things that you've seen like positive change with, like when talking about language, okay, so like. She has a whole chapter of grammar of animacy, talking about how important the way you talk about things is. Well, I mean, for me, in my own life, I look at how people kind of viewed non-binary and gender neutral language, and that's something that like I've been able to see change within like my own very short lifespan. Just from like, even just the way that I think about things when I've like switched over to gender neutral language, but even to like, I don't know, like neither of my sisters are non-binary, but after I came out as non-binary, my mom refers to my sisters as my siblings, because she's like, I'm just gonna not mess it up. I was like, okay, great. But like, even that type of thing, like just kind of like assuming more like gender neutral language, like that's already just changed even like what we've been on for like the younger generation. So I think there's definitely hope.
I'm by no means an expert on this, but this is like my thesis topic. And I'm like, I'm super passionate about this because, well, first of all, hi, I'm Mackie, I'm late. But yeah, I've been working on how to combat like climate doom is what it's called. And like the only way you can do that is with climate hope. Everything I learned that inspired me to start this project came from this book and from Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, who did a TED talk called it's How to Find Joy in Climate Action. It's really awesome, it's amazing. But basically what you want, like what the first step is she gives everyone like a Venn diagram. And it says, what brings you joy? What are you good at doing? And what needs doing? So you like find all those things, and where they come together, that's your specific tailored action. Because it's not sustainable for someone who's like not at all interested in something with the climate. Like, for instance, like some people, really thrive in doing field work and getting outside, and some people are more like digital based, or like want to, interact in that way. So it's all about finding your personal strengths and what gives you energy, because it's not sustainable if you are not, a hands in the dirt person. If you are like, I need to put my hands in the dirt, it's only going to last for so long. Like you have to follow your own nature, and kind of think about what needs doing, which is like the biggest thing I've learned from this project. And also, it's like, I think just like talking about it more and focusing on what is being done and how you can help that also is a big thing. But yeah, basically I would highly recommend that. I don't know, I can send you guys that TED talk if you're interested. It's awesome. Like I was just thinking about it, and that's when I decided I would do my thesis on it, because I'm like, I need that. Like that's what I can do. So yeah, very cool stuff.
I've been like taking notes about like what everybody is saying, but I'll like text you after and some like any other resources that you have. I'm sure.
I feel like also like living in communities rather than like being so hyper individualistic. Like what you were saying about The Good Place, how like even the person with like the most points, he was like still like living on his own, and he still was falling like so far short of like getting into the good place and everything. So I feel like, yeah, like just living in communities, because like even if you don't have something that you need, you can like connect with like people around you to like someone's gonna have it, you know, like you don't necessarily need to buy it. Yeah.
I'm not sure if this like connects as much with, it probably connects a little with the book and like that sense of community. It's less like eco-centered, but I come from like a really small town. I knew like every single person that lived there. I didn't really like my small town, highly conservative, but it was still like really nice that like I knew my neighbors. And like, you know, if I was out of like whatever, I literally like would go over to my neighbor's house, just knock on their door and be like, hey, do you guys have this? And I'm like, yeah, sure, here. And it was like just that like sense of community that like you don't really have now, especially like now. I mean, I live by myself. I don't know who my neighbors are. And I was like, oh, I should like go and like knock on their doors. No, what if they're serial killers? I'm not gonna do that. I live alone. They're gonna know I live alone. We're in next door neighboring single apartments. So I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like a little bit harder to get that maybe more like immediate sense of community just with your neighbors, because a lot of us just don't really know our neighbors. But I definitely think that that's like a really good thing to like, you know, stay local, get a good community, and like, you know, just find support from that.
You can go ahead, sorry, I just saw that Nia wanted to say something, but I'll wait for the.
Okay, in terms of like hope and environmental activism, I was just gonna say, I think there's a really interesting part near the beginning of the book where she like asks like a group of students like, do you think that humans like can benefit nature? And most of them said like, no. And I think that's like really important in changing our thinking, where a lot of the time we think about it in terms of like, oh yeah, humans are like this really like destructive force in terms of like nature. And so like the problem is humans, and like, but I don't feel like, at least for me personally, I think about it like humans need to like benefit nature, like we're in a coexistent relationship, and like we can help nature and certain plants grow and thrive, and we should do our best to do that. And I think that's just like an important part of changing the thinking in terms of environmental activism. So, I'd say that.
I don't really know how to word my point, and I've been thinking about it for like a while because I feel like this book triggered like a really deep, like a heavy deep dive for me. But I just, when thinking about like hope, there's like so many, okay, when thinking about hope and when thinking about just like the theme of the book about like passing down knowledge and making knowledge like accessible, I think a lot about like how marginalized communities, like people of color, are affected by climate change, and just like how my own relationship with the environment has like changed like as I get older and like talk to like members of my family, or like realize like how my relationship with the environment was just so influenced by like systems of oppression, basically. And I don't know why that just gives me hope, but I feel like for me, it's like all these issues that we've like talked about, like capitalism, colonialism, and like environmental distress are like all connected. So it's just like, I feel like through like passing down knowledge, through building communities, like we've been saying, like, and understanding like how climate change like affects different groups of people, and it doesn't all like look the same, I guess. I don't know, like that just gives me hope for some reason, because there's just like work to be done, but like once you fix one thing, it'll like hopefully everything will just start to be eliminated. I don't know.
I really love like the idea of like the like power of knowledge, how it is like how things as like a way to like honor and like be grateful for like the planet. And I'm thinking about what you said about like knowing your neighbors, and I think that like we also like the language part, like language is like world building, and like I think she like talks about like knowing like the names of plants and like being able to like name them and like identify them is like one way of doing that. And the book How to Kill a City, which is about like gentrification, is he talks about like in New Orleans, like he interviews like people who have been like in the city for like a really long time and how like over time, like it used to be like community used to be like really strong and then like people stopped like talking to each other and then we just like forget that like other people are there and like you forget that like there are like friends to be made and like people to know and like the yeah, like our plants are our neighbors. I forgot what that was. Oh, but yeah, like seeking out like just like learning is like a concrete action that like everyone can take and it's yeah. So our goal
Also, just to build upon that last point and my point I made also, I feel like I like learning about like indigeneity and like advocacy also really helped me put a lot of things in perspective about nature. And just like thinking about like land and like belonging and stuff. And I don't know, I just feel like that's a very important conversation that needs to be had, like the way that they're like still situated in this country is like really messed up. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, when you said like language is like world building, that was making me think too about like the gift economy. So like personally, I learn best through like stories. And I think it's interesting how in the past, like when we didn't have like the information scientifically, whatever, we would create stories, like obviously the creation story, things like that. But like how, if you think about like the gift economy, like part of why like there's so much joy and gratitude in the object is because there's a retelling of that story usually. Like whenever I have people over and I have a gift that I want to show off because I think it's cute, like I always tell people about like how it came to be, who gave it to me, that kind of thing. Like I just think it's interesting to the learning thing as well, though, like tying that in because I think it is really important that like we tell stories about the things that we didn't know, but now that we know so much, now that we've like learned so much, we can write much better stories and tell the stories in a different way. Like when I was gardening with my mom when I was little, we would pick green beans. And so I like started making a story because I was bored picking green beans about the classes of the green beans. I'm so but now like I actually know how green beans actually grow. And it's, I don't know. It just like yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about a combination of like what both of you were talking about and like what Nia was mentioning. Obviously like the large like theme of the book has to do with like indigeneity and like land and like relationships to like specifically like US soil. But I thought it was also really interesting how maybe it's because of my own like hyper awareness of it, but like how she mentioned certain things that are indigenous practices that are still carried on in like Latino cultures, because there are so many like a lot of comparing like the US versus like Latin America, there are a lot of like indigenous practices and like languages that are part of like general culture. So even like people who are very like high class in those regions are still going to be taking part in like indigenous practices, even if they don't like attribute it to like such, like the names of cities and all that stuff. But I thought it was really interesting because a lot of like the media that I was consuming outside of reading Braiding Sweetgrass and like my own experiences are tied to indigenous practices from Latin America, like reading about the Three Sisters. All of like Mexican cuisine is built around the Three Sisters because they're like are like agriculture and like landscaping and all that stuff is like super like talked about in my family. And like I don't know how to like narrow all this down, it's pretty big concepts. But like there's the intersectionality of this book and like how I was like tying into many themes and even like being in this classroom and there's like a little poster talking about like the Latino workforce and like land. Wait, what is the other part of it say?
Land-based industries.
Yeah, land-based industries. And a lot of the times like it is Latino, but a large part of Latino is like indigenous people. So we have like a lot of indigenous people that are not indigenous to this land, but to lands in like more in the south, working like our like I don't know. It's like how can you like the way you receive food double bad, where you're like we're also gonna display other indigenous people and have them work under horrible conditions.
Like just like making things really hard.
I just thought that was super interesting and it made me like talk to my parents more because I wasn't aware that like certain things were like specifically like indigenous and like my dad's dad, my grandpa, my great grandpa, he is indigenous to Mexico. And so my grandpa knew how to speak like this language called like Tarasco. And my dad knows a few words of it. And he's like, yeah, he's like, it was funny because like it died that quickly. He was like, we like literally just never learned the language. And like now I don't know. He's like, your grandpa didn't know anything about it. And like I don't know anything about it. So he's like, so I just know that that's there. He's like, but don't ask me. And I was like, yeah, like I idea. And 2 summers ago, I spent a lot of time with my family in El Salvador that lives like in a farm, and they make like everything. Like my I have like a 100-year-old like great like grandpa. Well, like from yeah. So there's a man there. And he has like a really like awesome hat, like other hat, and like what is it? Oh, cane, and they're all like handmade. Like it's just so cool. And their coffee, their bread, their chocolate, like everything. And when I was over there, every single person I would like see, I would like say hi to. And then when I came back to the US, I remember so distinctly like going into the supermarket and like saying hi to everybody and then like walking in and being like, wait, oh no, why did I just embarrass myself like walking up to 5 random people in the supermarket? I was like, hi, like how are you doing? Like how's your day going? Because I'm like, I guess you don't do that here. And then you get used to it, but it's sad to like reverse get used to it. You're like, oh, I'm used to saying hi to everyone. That's like, oh, remembering that technically you don't really do that. But yeah,
I think that that's something that we should try to implement more in our own lives. Like we were talking about community a little bit earlier, but I think that that is really important in like, you know, offering support, but also just making life enjoyable. Like walking into a supermarket, not saying hi to anyone. It's weird if you do. Like, especially after COVID, I feel like everyone's social anxiety is spiked. Hopefully that's not just me. But like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like a lot of people are like, it's just like, especially in the US, it's just like everything's a lot more impersonal. And I wish that like it was more personal. Like, I wish that like people just had a little bit more community and talked a little bit more to each other. Cause like, 1, I feel like we'd be less depressed. And 2, I feel like it would be less socially awkward than to say hi to people. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna be starting it on my own, but
That's and hey everyone, that's an interesting point because I remember I think it's like also like what hello means to people too, because like you do like when you go to the store, you're like, oh, hi, how are you? And then like the response is like supposed to be like good. And then that's it. Whereas like I remember my Spanish professor, my freshman year, she was like, oh, it was so hard for me when I first came to like America, the US, because like people would be like, oh, hi, how are you? And then she'd be like, oh, well, my day started off like this, and then I would do this, and then I would go here and I would go here. And then like everybody would be like, okay. Like I didn't want to know that. So I think it's also like changing the meaning of like when you're asking people like, how are you? Like not just being like, oh, good, how are you? So like I guess like changing like I guess it starts with like changing your responses. I think most of the time when I ask my friends, like when my friends ask me how I'm doing, I'm gonna give them the whole 9 yards. It's gonna be the whole tangent. You're gonna hear from when I woke up to what my roommate said, to what I did, to like all this stuff. So I think it also goes back to like, I guess if you're trying to build that community, like changing your responses when you like go out.
I think exactly like Douglas was saying, I come from a family of Polish immigrants, and the question isn't even how are you or how's your day been, but have you eaten today or are you hungry? And that takes it to a different, that's like way more personal, and you get to share an experience then, as opposed to like the cold kind of like, how are you? Like, I'm fine. Like you just move on from that. Instead, you get to like share an experience and I don't know, talk about what you got to eat that day. I mean, everybody's lives revolve around food.
Yeah, that was like the universal language.
I think like another thing, especially thinking about what Douglas said, is that like it's you know when you're a kid or you talk to a kid and they're like, and then I fell down and then I went like and then I talked to this person. It's like so natural for us to communicate about our lives, and it's like a learned thing to just say good, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like it's sad and it's not true for everywhere, like you said, like in El Salvador. But it's like I don't know. It's just sad because you know you wait and you just look at a kid like. It's like that's what we should be doing. We should be. I mean, maybe not. And then I saw this, but you know, sharing a little more. You know, it's you're not gonna learn anything from someone saying, "How are you?" Good. You know, it's just like to fill empty space, and that's not the point.
I think for me, something that I would want to try to do more to help be more like community centered is like to maybe like check in on your friends more. Like I think that like it's something that is very easy to forget, but also easy to do. Because let's be honest, I'm not gonna walk into a supermarket and someone asks me how are you, and I'm not gonna tell them my whole day because that's really awkward and embarrassing, and I don't want to do that. But I'm gonna be sitting there the whole time like, oh god, I've been talking for way too long. But I feel like checking on your friends is something that like I don't know, it makes my whole day if someone's like, hey Brian, how are you? Haven't heard from you in a while. Like I don't know, I think that that's something that like we could do more often.
I love that you brought up like the like childishness of like just talking about yourself and like out like having like feeling the need to like reduce it to good or like whatever. But I read The Little Prince for the first time recently. And I've just been thinking about that a lot, because they're like the theme of the book is just really centered around like how children are so susceptible to like seeing beauty and it's like purest form, and like it's something that's like we lose that like when we grow up, and because we're told like that's not important, like the finding like meaning and like living is like shifted from the small like beauties that we find in like every day. And I think that like this book has like stuck with me for so long because I've been able, like she talks about like beauty in like a way that's like scientific and like
and like really intelligent and and the gosh, what was I gonna say? I don't know. It just like stopped.
I was also like, I love The Little Prince. It's one of my favorite books, and I was also thinking about that book when we were reading this.
Yeah.
Like I was like, because it talks a lot about like, you know, like taming the other person is like the word that it uses is like, you know, when you like become friends with someone, you're like, it used like taming because it was like referencing like a fox and a little boy. But it was talking about like, you know, you're kind of both agreeing that you will, you know, you're gonna affect each other. Like, you know, the fox is like saying like, I can't go back to like a time when I wasn't tamed because now we're friends. Like I can't go back to that because like now like we're like friends together. It's a really cute book. But it was like, I think that was also talking about, and she had a quote in here where she was like talking about how humans have like domesticated plants by like through farming, but then also how like plants have in turn domesticated us. And it was like, it says like a kind of mutual taming, and that's why I like directly thought about the Little Prince book.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
That is.
I was thinking about that too.
I know this is something that I've talked to Nina and Lauren a lot about, but just like being in nature, like it provides, it like scratches an itch on the head of my inner child. And it just is so nice. Yeah, and I love like being able to like love the environment in a way that's so not #untamed. But I know it all. Untamed by
I think that, I don't know if this will actually be like, maybe everybody knows this, so I don't need to like say it out loud. But I just wish that like, I don't know, the environment was like, I don't know how to say this, but like more accessible to like everyone because of how healing it is. Like when I think about like big cities and like gentrification and like socialization and just like paying to go places or paying for like equipment, or just like, there's just so many like layers to it. I'm just like, I wish everybody like had the opportunities that I have and like the sites of like knowledge building through nature, because it does teach you so much and it is so grounding. Yeah. And like I said, like all these just things are connected. So it's like, there's just so much you can learn from getting your hands dirty.
Well, that's what he talks about. She like says like people will come to me and ask, okay, what advice do you give for someone who like wants to get back in touch like with the land? And her like advice, she's like, I always say, you know, build a garden. I gotta be honest, not everyone can. I can't build a garden right now. I live like it's like not like you make a really good point. Like even something as simple as having your own garden is like really out of reach for a lot of people. I wish that it like wasn't.
I just, not to go on like a personal tangent, but I think about my Nana who lives in Arkansas, because I interviewed her last year about her relationship to nature, like living in like very rural parts of Arkansas before. And she was just like, yeah, like I was forced to farm. So like as a kid, I just didn't like it. But she was just like, none of us like we weren't conditioned to like just be outside because of like the safety aspect of it. And like she just is such a homebody, but in a way where like if it gets, maybe this is actually just being old, but she just doesn't like to be outside like because it gets so hot. But like it feels so good. And I just like when I do like naturey stuff, like explaining that to my parents sometimes, they're just like, why are you like doing that? Because like that wasn't how they were really raised growing up. And I don't know, like I think there's a stigma that like, I'm gonna say it, nature is like a white people thing. I said it. And I just hate that so much because like for so many people of color, it can be so healing. And it like connects you back to so many roots too. And I just wish it was like more accessible and like welcoming. Oh, yes, welcoming too. Sorry to get mad. But like, I just think about like other environmental communities in Columbus, Ohio, where I live. And like trying to get in there, and it just feels like weirdly gatekeepy, or maybe I just don't see enough people that look like me to feel comfortable in that space. But I'm just like, okay, let's talk about that.
The Department of Agriculture, whatever the School of Agriculture at OSU, recently published a diversity issue for their publication, and the entire publication is written by white people. The entire department, my whole time at OSU, for it being an entirely like founded on agriculture, all of my classes are just filled with white people. There's no diversity or whatever, and I wonder what like can be done to break down these barriers and help, people of color reconnect with the land in a way that's healing. And I don't know, that's a huge issue, obviously, but
I think
it's really frustrating
on
to
that
see.
topic, yeah, I think it's also like a class issue, like race as well, but coming from an area where there wasn't much money and like coming here, how people just like go rock climbing in plastic gyms, I was like, you guys can afford like hundreds of dollars of equipment, and like they have their own skis, they have their own Subarus, like they're going to Colorado. That, I'll say it. That was like for me like a wake up call. Cause I mean, let's be real, like I'm not over here with like a roof rack and like a fucking kayak of my own. I mean, so to me, like coming here and going to like the Outdoor Adventure Center and seeing people pop their skis on a snowy day to go down a campus hill, I'm like, that's privilege. And I didn't have that. And like, I'm a white girl, and I think a really big thing was, how can I get involved in a way that is free and mutually beneficial to me and my community? And for me, that was going to community gardens and stuff. Yeah. And so like, I think that like you said, with like accessibility, like making those opportunities that are actually accessible, like more known. And like being in the Food Equity Club, like we organize a carpool. So like if you don't have a car, you can still go, you can wake up, you can go. And I think stuff like that is just critical. And also like, the Iuka Ravine, like I've talked to people and they've never been there, or like Glen Echo, like they don't know what that is. And like, these are all free nature spaces like within the city that are accessible, whether you walk, you bike, take the bus. I think it's that sort of stuff. Like, how do you make nature seem approachable, I guess, from an urban standpoint? Because obviously if you live rural, you're already within it. Like your grandma, you might have a more complicated relationship with it. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's important to emphasize, like, you don't have to have all the hiking gear and go to like, a set of mountains or a national park. Like I went to my first national park like this year. Like, so but and the funny thing too, I guess that's a good segue, is I went to the Smoky Mountains, and being there, I realized like, wow, this is like my first national park, like this is crazy. And I realized that the relationship that I've had there is one that I've had my entire life, with my backyard, with the creek behind my house, with my grandparents' garden. And that was kind of just like a wake-up call, like it broke that barrier of like, you have to be of a certain status or gender or class in order to feel a certain way. And I realized like all that's bullshit. And I was like, I have a closer relationship with nature than half of these hikers who are from out of state. And that's all I have to say.
I think it's really unfortunate that we've, as a society, have come to see humans and like the anthropogenic world is not a part of nature, because in reality, we are coexisting. Like we are nature, we are from the earth. Everything that we are living and sitting on has come from the earth, or dead animals, dead plants, whatnot. And I think that to start to heal, especially in like a political sense, like we need to realize fundamentally as a culture that we are not separated from the natural world. We are living as a part of it, and everything that we create is a part of the natural world, because we exist on this earth. Like there's no separation. There's nothing that separates us from them. In this case, them is nature.
Well, yeah, I thought that your point was really good and it made me think more, and also your point, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Oh, Aaliyah.
Aaliyah, was that, I feel like this idea of being like an eco-friendly person has been commodified, which makes, like, I feel like that is also like put in place a lot of that like economic, like type of like class barrier to like enter into a lot of these spaces, because I feel like, you know, like if you are just an individual in a new community that you don't know much about, like, especially if you're a young person, this is obviously from my personal perspective, but I feel like it's kind of hard to know where to start. So if you're like looking online or something to like try to find like, oh, like the, you know, nature-y communities, a lot of them are that like, you know, we have this, and this is what we do, and like, it's like less like kind of like community and like accessibility focus, and it's just not as welcoming.
And then I forgot how proud of I get. Just thinking about it, in those spaces, I feel like other narratives, like outside of like a white centric and even male centric perspective, like aren't really centered or brought up. So that's just another example of like knowledge and like community building and like recognizing like other people have like very different experiences and like very different things they could also bring to the table about environmental justice that like you wouldn't even understand or like know unless you like talk to those people. Like a lot of people, like, I don't know, there's just so many like little things that like my privilege was just like living in Ohio and like going to school here, like that I will never understand, like somebody who lives like random US state here, like, you know what I mean? Like, unless I like read those narratives or like talk to those people or like expose myself to those other communities.
It's only, you guys talking about accessibility of stuff also makes me think like, I think about like the people I love and like ability level as well when it comes to nature, because like so many people have allergies. They do, it's true. But like a lot of people I love, and I've noticed this especially talked about by my friends who are people of color, specifically Black people, like how they're like a big barrier for nature for them is like allergies and their reaction to like the physical environmental world around them, and how much like that has been kind of a result of like, you think about like redlining, how like when you're like put around certain carcinogens when you're so young and you weren't around, like you didn't build the certain immunities that are necessary in order to like, I don't know, engage in like a freer way with nature. And also like my friends who like have chronic pain and stuff, like the ways that like you have to like drive or like, I don't know, even nature, there's just a lot of barriers.
And why is that?
We know.
Yes. You're right.
No, sorry. No, please go. Sorry, I have a lot of thoughts, so I'm gonna try my best to put them all together. But jumping off what Mia has said, and then also, like, Alyssa Washida is a professor at OSU. She wrote White Magic. And she's Indigenous, and I was thinking about like I believe there's one chapter, again, I read it a while ago, but like there's one chapter about like witchcraft and like how kind of like the a lot of like that like current like the like commodification of like Indigenous wisdom and like the watering down of it, like for like white people who
Like
are,
the sage takes that urban outfit.
yeah, and who are like interested in this like mysticism of like nature and like the interconnectedness, but like it is like a watering down of those like fundamental ideas, and they're not being like
you're not like going to the source, like to actually like intentionally like learn about them. And it like also reminded me of, I've also just started reading about dialectical naturalism, which is philosophical like essays by Murray Bookchin. And he also like, I want to read like some of his other stuff. He did like freedom and ecology, like he does a lot of his like the stuff that he writes about is like really interesting. But he talked about, like, I'm just like on the introduction to it, but he talks about like how we need to like develop a philosophy of naturalism that is like in between like separateness and like interconnectedness, because like in Western ideologies that we've developed this theory of like identity where it's separated from like an idea of becoming. So there it's just like being in like separate stages. So like when we look at like our environment, it's like there are seeds and then there are plants and then there are the things that we eat. But like dialectical naturalism kind of comes from the idea that like being is becoming. So like which goes back to like is how we like view like our natural world, like they're always in a state of becoming, like everything around us is always in a state of becoming, and like us, even like our relationships to like the world around us. But like that is kind of like, he kind of builds off of that and is like, we need to find like a middle ground between like this idea of like separateness and like oneness, because like oneness is also not like what the world is. Like it isn't like, and just like viewing it as like interconnected and like mystical, and like we kind of like rid it from like those fundamental properties that like help us to view our world for what it is.
I'm sorry, the Wendy, is it Wendy Williams on?
I know.
He has no idea. Yeah, but that, but like learning about like, I think that Robin Wall Kimmerer like does an incredible job of that, like of moving us like further away from like the white environmental ideas of like mystical nature, and like because then you're not like seeing it for as something like real and like
That's so heavily imposed on Indigenous thought already. We see like Indigenous people as like a mystical relationship to the land. but
Yeah.
Reality, that's so far from true.
Yeah, and like I think there is, like, she literally shows us that there is room for like implementing like Indigenous wisdom into like Western scientific like processes, and I think that's like heavily needed, and like in order to find a way to like properly honor the things that we're like, that's all.
That reminded me a lot of like Buddhism too, and like almost every standpoint, like one like the almost like mystification and romanticizing of it, and I think it totally pulls us further from the actual concepts and relationship we have to it, and then also like kind of the struggle I think of a lot of Westerners, like including myself, to like kind of integrate like those Eastern and Western philosophies, because they totally are completely at odds with each other, like of just how you perceive yourself in relation to objects, or in this case like nature, because instead of like
objectifying nature and dominating it. It's like the indigenous practices of how to live with it and integrate with it. And I think like from, I don't know, like the way that we conquer nature, whether we're like building on it or taking from it, if we viewed it kind of as more of a living being, or is it very different.
I would like to open the floor / Zoom room for anyone who has like any thoughts that maybe haven't been shared yet, or anyone who just hasn't had a chance to speak yet and like wants something, has something to say. But no pressure.
I just wanted to say I haven't finished the book, but I did really love everything everyone has said, and I definitely agreed with a lot of it. Especially the accessibility thing was something I was thinking about the whole time too. And also my favorite practice of sustainability recently has been with clothes, which is something I don't think we got to talk about today. But with like that being one of the major trends with like fast fashion and stuff that is actively destroying our planet. Ava and I listened to this podcast called Binge-topia, and they like talked about how the new cool thing is how many wears you get out of clothes. Like, I don't know if you guys remember like in the Lizzie McGuire movie where they were like, you're an outfit repeater. And now it's like, it's so much cooler if you're like, I've had these jeans since I was in 8th grade and I still wear them and like look awesome. And like, that's actually cooler now. Like, that's the flex. And just like, yeah. I also love the idea of like making gifts for Christmas this year rather than buying stuff. And yeah, and I can't wait to have a garden someday. And here's my contribution. And I hope you all have a good night.
That is such a good point, because I really struggle with clothes. One, because I'm not great at shopping, and also because I don't know where to buy them from, because the stuff that like is in stores today is like really poorly made, and I don't want to spend money on something that's gonna like break in a year in the washing machine or less time, let alone the fact that half of it is made so unethically. Like, I just want to buy something that's gonna like last me a little bit, but also I know that there's like kind of like an over influx of people shopping in thrift stores who don't like economically need it, and like taking away from like clothing, like accessibility for those who might need the thrift store option. So I don't know if you guys had any particular shopping hacks or wisdom.
Hack is you have to spend more money to buy the sustainable option.
But even that, like, I've tried to research that a little bit, and I just still don't know like what brands. Like, I would be much more willing to spend more money on something if I knew it was gonna last, but I just like still don't know which brands.
Make a brand list.
Yes.
Also, like on this topic, I wrote like a really big paper on literally all of this. I kind of consider it my thesis, like Mackie, but it's about like consumerism and spirituality. So if anyone wants to read it, let me know, I'll share it.
You should put it on the blog.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm trying to get it in student books, so I don't know if like I can do that. Like double. Yeah, I don't know how that works, but I'll try. But yeah, with like brands,
I'd love a brand list personally.
it's really hard. I struggle with that too, like, and even with like using Depop, like this sweater would be like $100, and it's like,
That's the thing, it's like Depop's hard, and then I like whatever is easiest. You know what? I'm not used to that, and I don't really want to look first. I don't want to look for like 6 hours for a pair of jeans that might fit, but the Depop seller took kind of a low-key bad picture of them, and I don't know if they're in my size, and then they come and it's like, okay, you got these from Urban Outfitters and you're reselling them. Like,
So I would love a brand list.
no.
We can
There's, I have like 5 bags of
clothes. Like I need to have a clothing store.
Yeah, actually a clothing sale, like I feel like would be the way to go, cause it's like, then you're like getting it from your friends.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a space to do it?
A swap, yeah,
Stuff swap at the farm this summer that we need to donate. So this is a good spot. You guys are- Yeah, we could use the greenhouse. I don't know, do you guys want to get farmer?
Yeah, true, it's true.
All of this stuff, got this in the closet, and they do like a big pickup situation where they can just like come and get all your clothes all at once. So seriously, if you guys are actually considering that, like we can help out.
Yeah, so.
That would be so cool, guys. Also, like, I have thought about what you said about thrifting a lot because it's like something that I don't know. I've been thrifting for like a really long time, and like I had that realization. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm contributing to the problem. And then like I started, I mean, obviously this is not, I am still learning about it, but I think like the sheer amount of clothes in a thrift store and like the stuff that doesn't even see the like light of day, basically, it's like there is an overabundance of clothing. And it's like, if thrifting is a good option for you, I feel like it's, you know, it's not, I wish that it were better and like, obviously, like maybe if you can afford, I don't know, it's like maybe like thrift stores or like consignment shops, especially like if you can afford it. That's, I don't know, I just think that there is a lot of clothing and like,
Yeah, there's a lot that goes to waste, cause I looked into that and like a lot of like stuff that like is in thrift stores sometimes doesn't even go to like the rack.
right.
Yeah, a lot of it they.
I think also, I think that complaint kind of rooted more from the people who were thrifting the best stuff every time they went to just only then go and sell it for $200 when they got it for $2. And I personally think like that is messed up, but I don't think there's anything wrong with being a college student and going to a thrift store and buying. Like I agree with what you're saying. There's so many clothes, and I just think a lot of that conversation started from the reselling more than just the shopping there.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree with you, Jade. I was gonna say, like, as college students, I am not, but that is like the best option, I feel like sometimes, because we're not like, well, I guess not every fully grown adult has all their shit together and has money and everything, but in theory, you know, we're all just trying to figure our stuff out. And so thrifting is like the best option. I think the only thing that, like you said, Jade, when all like, I guess there was like a lot of discourse about like the ethicalness of like thrifting and like white people, or like rich people specifically, like more of like a class thing, buying so much than reselling on Depop. But if you are gonna thrift, it's pretty much just be like a mindful of like what you're getting, like in the winter time, like leave coats and stuff. Like if you, okay, listen, I gotta call myself out on this too a bit. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so obviously I do not buy like little girls t-shirts and stuff like that. We're buying kids sizes of stuff. When you know obviously it doesn't fit you, that's not ethical. Don't do that. But I will say on the other hand, sometimes I'll be like, oh, look at this big sweater. I want this big sweater. But if it's like in the winter time or whatnot, like I'm not a size extra large, you know, so it's not really kind of like fair of me, or I guess I try to be more mindful now when I'm like just buying a ton of big sweaters and stuff. So if it's the winter time and someone who is an extra large or maybe just a large in general needs that sweater and they don't have it because I'm like hoarding all the extra large sweaters because I want a big comfy sweater. So just pretty much like thrift whatever you can, but just be mindful of like making sure you're buying stuff that you actually need, and I don't know, keeping other options for people to be able to get some as well, you know?
That's really good advice, I feel. I think for me, the problem I run into is like when I need something like very specific, I think that's when like thrifting also gets pretty hard. And then I'm like, okay, I need a black belt. And then you go to the thrift store and I'm like, okay, none of them fit me. And then you're driving again to another thrift store. And it's like, okay, so now I've driven to 3 places. I haven't found what I've needed. And it's like, what do you do then?
Something that I found really fulfilling and enjoyable that doesn't really relate to like finding a new piece, you know, unless you get really good at it, is like repairing my old clothes and turning them into something else. And like, I don't know, just have a lot of fun learning how to hand sew and like use a sewing machine and take old clothes or old jeans, like patch them up with an old flannel, or like, I don't know, make cool designs and make it wearable again. As opposed to like buying into the trends in fast fashion, you know, I think it's like, it's cooler. It's almost like part of the gift economy idea, but you're giving the gift to yourself.
And that like goes on too with like good like washing practices and like taking care of your clothes. Like if you like turn your dryer to like low heat or like no heat, it's a lot better for like the durability of your clothes. Or if you just like, or if you just like hang dry them and stuff and like don't like heat them up, you know.
Also, we were kind of talking about this the other day, but like they really don't make clothes like they used to. Like they really don't. But it's also like I feel like the reason clothing is so well, like a big part of it too is like finding clothing that fits you and or like tailoring it to fit you is like something that will make you value a piece so much more. And like if it's like something that you know you just buy off of a website or something, it's like okay, it comes, it fits okay, and then you kind of forget about it. But if it's like a piece that you get custom fit to your body, you know, that you love, it'll just like it just makes it so much more special. Because I think of like this pair of jeans I thrifted, and obviously I'm like 4 feet tall, so I was like had to get the bottoms hemmed, but I'm like I spent a lot of time making those pants work, and it's like I'll never get rid of those pants until they literally fall apart. So I don't know, just like little things. It's like we used to care so much more about our clothes and treat them like they were special, and we should get back to that.
So this 7/16 is true. So if anybody, well, do we have any? I guess we can start like wrapping up and like if anybody has like final thoughts.
Oh, okay, I do have one thing. Like for OSU students, the next semester, if you just need like a random class, I took queer ecologies last fall semester, and it really changed my life. I think it teaches us so much about like how relations work in terms of like people in nature. And the readings were really good, and the conversations were really interesting, and I feel like I haven't been exposed to like anything like that. And yeah, it's a really fun class.
Shameless plug, if you want to experience queer ecology IRL, you can come to the farm and volunteer. Also, if you want to like, but we don't have any consistent volunteering dates right now, but as it starts to get a little bit warmer in the springtime, and we're gonna have some events going on in here in the winter, namely a pickling workshop, fermentation. I'm hoping for it to be kimchi, and a natural dye workshop this winter, which if you're looking to upcycle your clothes or learn how to, I might involve like a little hand sewing aspect. Leah, yeah, if you guys would like to get involved with farm, we are open to everyone, and we would love to see all your beautiful faces again, tending to the earth, or I don't know, sharing love to our community. So if you want the Instagram or something, you can find me. Cool.
Also on the media list on the Instagram and on the blog, I linked there's like a BIPOC in agriculture and food resource list that I think somebody shared on Instagram like 2 years ago, but it's like really good. And so if you're looking to like look into like other farms like across like the US or like other people who are like doing cool things in agriculture or trying to do with agriculture.
The Black Forager Instagram account.
Oh my god,
It's
yeah.
actually just crazy
It's
awesome.
so great.
I had 2 quick thoughts that kind of connect. So, the first one was, what I was thinking about, just, this is like come up like, in multiple things that we were talking about, like connotations of like whiteness and like nature and all that stuff. First, it's kind of crazy that, it's kind of crazy that like white Americans are like what are like wealthy white Americans are like a lot of people's like heuristic to nature, and it does almost have like a sense of like co-opting almost, because this is like ignores like a whole like working class of people who like are tied to nature out of like necessity, and it's nature like recreationally and then nature like harvesting and like it directly like interacting with nature. And yeah, just like also like paying note to like what comes to mind is pretty crazy. It made me think of my class or like a religious studies class that I took, and part of a unit we did was like on horror and horror movies, talking about how a lot of like horror movies in America, a lot of like the cult classics have to like take place in really like rural communities, so like Chainsaw Massacre and like all that stuff. Whereas in like other areas, like for example, Japan, their horror movies, like iconic horror movies like Godzilla, is very like city centered, and how those are like reflections of like the culture's like guilt based on like past actions. So for the US, that's like guilt with like slavery and like indigenous people. So obviously there's like an innate fear around like looking at a plantation. Even the word plantation, there's like no removing the connotations between like things like that. Like the fact that like areas of like US soil, like people can like visually trace the trail of tears, like that's like crazy. Which leads to my second point. If it's not clear by like every meeting and like everything we post, learning about like anything, like even in this area, like in like plant science, ecology, getting involved with nature, sustainability, like what to wear, fashion, all that stuff, like in every single topic and every other book we've explored, like we want to just make sure that the first resource you're getting when you're learning about this stuff is coming from like indigenous and like Black people, because clearly like that's not like the first thing other people think of, and like where you can learn the most and like the voice that often goes like unheard. So coming out of here and being like, oh, so inspired to do like stuff. The first follow should be our Columbus Bay. Alexis, what?
I don't know her last name.
The Black Border, at Black Border, like.
Also, shout out you guys for making those things accessible, because it's not the first thing that comes up, and you know, it's hard to do the work to like look for those resources. So thank you guys for like making that accessible to the community.
Yeah, movie rec that I saw from the Media Map. Last thing, and I'll shut up. But this movie, I had to rent it off Amazon. I rented this movie called I Dream in Another Language. It's on Canopy. It is. It's on Canopy? It is. Yeah. Okay. So forget what it's called I Dream in Another Language, and it was about a linguist's journey visiting like a small community in Mexico to try to speak with the last basically the last two speakers of this language, called like Citrid, and how they have beef. So he wants to like record them speaking to each other, but they do not want to speak to each other, but they're the last two speakers of the language, and drama ensues. So I do another language, super, as a matter of fact, yeah, I'm gonna watch it again this weekend.
It's a fictional story.
Oh,
You know that?
a fictional?
It's based off of I don't think it's a real language. Like it's like it's like more like conceptual almost. It's like a what if situation. I don't think it really happened.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, it's I thought that it was fictional.
I like when I looked, I was like, is this real? Like, oh my god, and I think it's like.
You mean like the language and the culture?
I think the whole story.
Oh, the
and
story and-
language. I think the language is fictional too.
But I feel like it does a really good job of talking about not only the relationship to like English and Spanish and indigenous languages, but the biases and like racial biases within indigeneity, which is a whole other topic that I think Dr. Kimmerer alludes to with like the national census like recording and like anyway, oh guys, 7:24. But look at the media map. It's awesome. And then yeah. That book announcement.
Yes, Bert, let me, you know what, let me make sure that I say it right.
Okay.
Okay, so for December, we're reading Year of the Tiger by Alice Wong. And Space has copies already, so if you like to support book space, that's a very good resource to get it from. But since December is disability awareness. Yeah, disability awareness.
I think it actually isn't disability awareness month, but the third is International Day of Persons with Disabilities.
Okay, so yeah, that's basically why we've selected this book, but it looks awesome. Really excited to read it. We're not quite sure what date yet for that meeting, but we'll get all the information out to you.
Do you know if it will be over break?
It'll be
Beginning of January.
Yeah, so probably like right after break, because break ends like the 9th normally.
Yeah.
So probably, it might not be the first weekend in January because people will still be out like at home or whatever, like not back to campus area or Columbus yet. So we'll probably do like the first Sunday after break, I want to say.
We'll see what's.
Is it Year of the Tiger?
Yes, Year of the Tiger, yeah.
Lee Wong is the editor of another book you may have heard of called Disability Visibility, and she slays so hard. So the fact that we get to concentrate just over like is awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, the book came out like 3 weeks ago, I think, and I got it from Bookspace like yesterday, and it was like.
Are they in the flux and flow space now?
Yeah.
Essentially, in there?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Also go check out.
Yeah. He always like stocks our books like each month, so if you guys like have the funds, like try to buy like from him, because it's really cool and is a hardcover hottie supporter. So
You should come to a meeting.
yeah.
That would be so great.
That would be crazy. Maybe next month that'll be our goal. Yeah.
Yeah, also like on that note, like if you guys do have like ideas for like spaces where we can hold meetings, let us know. Because
We're on the hunt.
yeah, we're on the hunt.
Yeah.
Books, shows, movies, text us, DM us.
True, any
Send a pigeon.
recommendations? Yeah, we have the suggestion form still.
Yeah.
Also, if you have any book that you'd like to, literally book topic, movie, any form of media, literally whatever you want to say, send it in there.
That's on the site.
Yeah.
And check out our newly published on our website article by our guest Sally on Buffy St. Marie. Read it and stream the playlist. Yeah, the playlist for this book.
It's fire.
Because it's
It's so good.
It's
Yeah.
so good.
It's felt like a country now.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, thank you all for taking the time out of your day to like be here and reading the book with us, however far you got. This is always just a wonderful time. Thank you, Lord, for
And if, for the seedlings, if you guys follow the Instagram, or like I will text communication with Lauren and Stephanie and you guys. About whenever you can be ready to come pick up. Be on the lookout for that, and yeah, maybe I can come bring them to the next meeting actually in January.
Yeah,
That would be-
that would be awesome.
that would be great. Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay, if you want it, you have to come.
Yeah, you just have to, that's the only way we can explore the ours. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you ever wanna do challenges to talk to stranger in the grocery store.
Yeah, it's true, it's true.
Getting somebody thinking about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Also, I
Should be taking those to our actual germination rooms if you want to.
So, yes, no, I drank a Red Bull this morning, literally color coded my first. So I was like,